Okay, so we're at 12:46. I'm going to call the policy committee meeting to order. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are privileged to meet on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and St'át'imc nations. First item up is there's an agenda recommendation. Anyone is prepared to do that?
That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
Second.
Thank you. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, then they have some minutes.
That the minutes of the policy committee meeting held on February 12th, 2025 be adopted.
Thank you, Cynthia. Second for that. Thank you, April. And any objections to that? Okay, hearing none, then that's accepted. Are there any trustee items?
Yes, just for the public and staff that may be listening. I was doing some research last policy meeting. I discussed what happens with employees when violence in the workplace tends. And since I have found policy 401.9, which outlines the actions for staff or students when and if this occurs.
Okay, thank you for doing that research and reporting out. Any other trustee items? Okay, hearing none, then we don't have any presentations. So that brings us to information items. Policy review schedule. And Danielle, I see your name there.
Thank you. There's really no changes from the last time we met, so the schedule's the same as last month.
Okay. And any questions or comments on the policy review schedule? Okay, hearing nothing, then we can move on to discussion items, which brings us to policy 804, animals on school property. And Chris, I see you are there.
Yes, thank you very much. So following Ms. Bushbrank's presentation to the board asked staff to seek additional legal advice, specifically regarding the presence of a staff dog in a classroom to support the parents' child's access to the educational program. So I hope folks had an opportunity in camera where all legal advice is kept to review that documentation. And what I have done, this was in your package, should that legal advice meet satisfaction of the board, I did incorporate it into an amended policy for consideration. But of course, the board will have to have that discussion first around the legal advice and if it's something like this. So I will open it up to the board to have that discussion.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I really liked the changes based on the information that I read before as well. There is one amendment that I would like us to consider. A lot of stratas or private property are including the must be licensed for a dog, because if a dog is not licensed, the property owner or the dog owner can be signed the fine through a bylaw notice. So we'd want to protect ourselves from that kind of a liability as well, I think. So just to include that the dog must be licensed within the municipality it resides.
If there's licensing available.
Yeah, if there's licensing available.
Because I don't think there would be anything out here for Blackwater. I would agree with that. Chris, your thoughts?
Oh, sorry, I'm just nodding because I'm leaving it for the discussion. So thank you. Okay. No, I think that's a great addition. Thank you for that. That's a good catch. I
do have one I guess question, because I see with the emotional support animals, and I believe this has come up in the past. But it says emotional support animals for a student. What if it's for staff?
So for staff, that's under an accommodation plan that we have previously. So the staff member would have to provide medical note regarding the need for accommodation, and then our regular measures to look at if it's something the organization is able to, without undue hardship, is the legal term, to support. We would apply that, and we would be working again with our council to ensure we're following all procedures. I would say that it's likely that for staff, it will be a higher threshold. Because again,
I guess my question is, Chris, is it doesn't show staff in here, so you're telling me it's somewhere else?
so we have, I'm sorry, let me just double check because I thought we had that there.
What did I see?
Before, under accommodation, an occupation plan. Yeah, so up further under assistance animals, or in it, I see it's been changed to dogs, sorry. For therapy dogs, it does speak to a documented accommodation plan. So that's why up top it's under individuals. So we still have therapy dog. So we're not necessarily opening up emotional support to staff, because that is not something that is a thing. It's actually we know that some airlines allow for that. But under the Employment Standards Act, it's not a legal term. The legality for staff falls under the assistance animals, where therapy is on there. So it'd have to be specific, a therapy dog for staff.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear because I know there have been teachers who've wanted to say that they need their emotional support dog in particular. So
Yeah,
I
that's
see
right.
Celeste and then Rachel. Celeste, go ahead.
I think Rachel had her hand up first, actually.
Oh, okay. I saw yours first. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, hi there. I wanted clarification on a couple of things. In 1.3, it refers to the superintendent and a designate. Who would be the designate there? And then just while I have your attention, there's a couple of other things I just wanted clarification on. In 2.1.5, it says ensure any allergies, extreme fears are taken into consideration, etc., if possible. But down in 5.2, it refers to schools that you can to get clarification on.
Yeah.
We missed. I missed most of that
I did.
last piece.
So did I.
So your internet cut out or something. Can you repeat? I got as far as 5.2, and then after
yeah.
that.
Oh, so 5.2 says it must accommodate the fears and so on. So where it says if possible versus must accommodate, I think maybe that needs some clarification. Does that make? Did you hear
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got that. So some consistency.
Yeah.
Okay, so may I ask the first question, which again you were referring to the impossible. Again, that has to do with just the from the legal advice that we. So I appreciate you caught that other piece about accommodation, because again, you weigh accommodation against need, and for example, in the case of a assistance dog, a CNI dog, if you have a student who must have the dog for access to an educational program, and there were a student or a teacher that had an extreme phobia of dogs, then we would look to see if we can do different classroom placement, etc. But again, in the case of a small remote site where it's because we do have one teacher, one room schoolhouses, that might not be possible. In which case, the human rights of access to education for a vision impairment, right, would potentially trump and anxiety to use that.
But I don't know that answered it. And
Maybe
her
I
first-
misheard.
yeah. So her first question was actually, who's the designate?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
1.3.
You're right.
So and it's not and designate, it's or designate.
Okay,
To
so
be clear,
yeah,
because Rachel stated as superintendent and designate, so
okay,
it's or. So that was her first question. But to me, and I might be way off base, and Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong. I think is that in the 2.1.5 it says if possible will accommodate, but then when you get down to 5.2 it says must accommodate. So there's
Correct.
it's not consistent there.
got it.
Right.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
I'm going to ask, because when we're online, it's tough to track. And respectfully, maybe best that I just take one question at a time, because I apologize, I conflated the two. So I'm going to go to the designate question first, and then see if we can get to a good resolution there, and then I'll move to the second.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
Thank you.
And it's echoey in this room, as people know. So for the designate, so in any case where you see designate, that's where you're empowering your superintendent, your one employee, to allow another member, agent of the board of the senior team, from a director to a principal, which is why it has principal down lower, to be able to make that, receive that documentation. So that if principal B, it's followed through on and they get the certification regarding an assistance dog, I know that's been done. And if I'm unavailable or out of the district or whatever, there's not going to be an undue lag to wait. So there's many policies that refer to designate, and that's will be someone that is also an agent of the board from a vice principal up that I can designate on my behalf. That's what that's for.
And that's standard across all. It's your responsibility, but you can delegate.
Yeah, but end of the day, it's on me if that messes up.
Yeah.
Because I've chosen to designate.
Okay. And the second piece?
Yeah, Rachel, does that make sense to you? Sorry, that was it. It was
Yeah,
Rachel's-
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the second piece, yeah, thank you for catching that. I think that we need consistency. I agree. And I would ask that we have the if possible rather than must, because I think we do have a concern there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that satisfactory, Rachel? Answers your question? Okay, thanks. Celeste?
Okay, I actually have a proposal to take that sentence out altogether. So I'm just going to start from the top of my notes. So the heading has been changed from assistant animals to assistant dogs. Is that right? So I think leave it as assistant animals or change the sentence below as well. It seems like one was changed and not the other. Animals is also more general and may allow for flexibility in the future if needed. I didn't understand why that change was proposed. Do you want me to pause there?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it should be dogs, because in the first instance, when I was trying to separate assistance dogs from emotional support animals, because dogs are the top level accredited animal, and many districts just allow for one. But again, as a proposal forward to allow for emotional support animals, so that's why we have that, and that could be different from a dog if the board so desired. But assistance dogs is correct in terms of the full certification, and that again we mentioned that's a BC Guide dog, the Services Dog Act, etc. So that's specific to dogs. So correct, it should say assistance dogs and be
Such as guide dogs, service dogs, therapy dogs,
That's right.
blah, blah, blah. Okay,
Thank you for that.
no problem. Okay, are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
So in 2.1.1, it says will receive written confirmation from a mental health professional identifying the need for the dog as an emotional support for a student with a disability. And what I'm proposing, and I'll email this to you, is to not use the word disability, but something like diagnosed medical condition. The other thing that I was wondering about with this is I believe it says that the principal will receive this information. But then you're the one or the superintendent is the one that's ultimately approving it. And I just wonder about, obviously the principals are aware of what's happening in their schools and what students have, but if we're asking a student to disclose medical conditions or disabilities or diagnoses, do we have a duty to limit the number of people that have to review that information for the purpose of this sort of accommodation? And should it come directly to you? Just what are the privacy impacts was like the underlying question that I had there. I'll just
Yeah.
pause.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. For privacy for students with medical health conditions or a diagnosed disability or neurological difference, et cetera, that results in an IEP, maybe plan, et cetera. Principals do have access to that and need to in order to ensure proper services are provided. So I would say that our principals are keepers of that information and understand their confidentiality responsibilities really, really well. On the same token, teachers will be informed, obviously, in working IEPs to support students with neurodiversity. There is a process whereby right now, because it is a medical model in inclusive education, in order to receive a designation, for example, there is the collection of student data, which obviously we keep confidential and within MyEd, which must refer to a diagnosis from a medical professional. So the privacy piece, I'm really glad you brought it up because it always provides that opportunity to share the importance of how we have a mechanism in place to protect student privacy. And the first one about the superintendent or designate, again, I think that it's a fair assumption of the duty of a principal of a school as an agent of the board to be able to have that information. And our director of instruction for learning services would also have access to that information, as would I, as a agent of the board in my role. But again, we all have our safeguards in place for the protection of privacy.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm going to keep going. There are a couple of just like semicolons missing. I'll just email you the points where I saw that. 2.1.3.1.3. It says to be approved by the superintendent, but I was wondering about adding the words to be approved in advance by the superintendent before they go and seek some kind of training. It's where
Remind me again, the 2 point.
it's look at 2.1.3 will receive written confirmation and proof if applicable. And I'm talking about the completion of an advanced training course at a recognized dog training organization to be approved in advance by the superintendent before they go and spend the money.
100%. That was the intent, but it's not clear. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you I wrote it down in here, so I'll send it to you. And then 2.1.4. So this is the same question. So this says we'll notify the school community in advance about the presence of an emotional support animal. And I was just wondering about the privacy impacts of that. You know, maybe the presence of an animal in the school, but the reason why is maybe a little too much, because then that is giving more information about, I mean, maybe people could guess, but I just wonder about the privacy impacts. I think you do have to notify the school community that an animal will be present in the building, but maybe we don't need to say out loud that it's an emotional support animal, just that an animal will be present and the reasons are not going to be advertised to protect students.
Yeah, I think I'm sure our principals can handle that delicately. I don't, what we don't want is, why is that animal allowed in the building? You have this policy and then you get inundated by it.
Right.
So I think it's, and a counter argument, and I'm not making it, but I think it's consideration is what we try to do from my practice as an inclusion support person is to destigmatize. And so by saying, oh yeah, that person has a CNI dog to help them with their vision.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that person has an emotional support dog to help them with their day, and isn't that a lovely thing? So
Yeah, that's good response. Got one more. You.
but I'm curious about that one. Is that something, because if we're making these changes, we need the board to approve. So are you still bringing that proposal to remove emotional support and just or service animal? That's at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might do, and it was just a question. It wasn't like
But
a hill to die on. Yeah, I think that might be,
Yeah. Thank you. Again, that's a question for the board. We can take out animal and just have dog to keep it super clean. I don't know about much support ferrets and cats and snakes.
I don't feel strongly about it, yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me as well, because we don't share out a lot of information, like even with our IEPs or our school learning plans and stuff, in particular Blackwater, because of the size, so we can identify students, who have different designations or what have you. So that makes sense. If like, oh, we got an emotional support dog and somebody's looking, so-and-so has a dog, so that must be. April, I see your hand going up, but I can't see your face. Your camera's not on you.
Oh, sorry. I was
No, I
eating my lunch, so I didn't want to be rude and eat in front of everybody on Zoom. Okay, yeah, my hand is up.
Okay, what? No.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Only because I just saw your tips of your fingers come up. So,
Okay.
Melissa, or Celeste, are you done?
I actually have a bit more, but I can hold off if people want to jump in. I can
Go ahead. You can finish.
Okay. So the next suggestion that I have is to take out 2.1.5 and 2.1.6 completely and say something like conduct a hazard and risk assessment in consultation with the site health and safety committee to determine potential impacts on the rest of the school community and develop a plan to monitor and address these impacts on an established review schedule. So just that might solve the problem that Rachel saw, and I'll email this text to you, Chris, and you can just digest it and think about how that might do what you're looking for, and then have a plan, right? Because once you introduce something new, sometimes you don't know what the problems are. So it has to be reviewed maybe every 6 months or a year, whatever.
Yeah, again, I think that's the intent of the consultation measures, but that said, I think combining the two together, it's smoother and it's not going to unnecessarily, cause some anxiety, right? In reading that.
And then is it okay for me to give you my last one?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the last thing that I was wondering about is whose care is the animal under? Are we suggesting that the student can bring in an animal that belongs to them, which will then need to be assigned to the care of an adult employee to be in compliance with our policy about animals on district property? Or where are the boundaries?
Right. So again, these are from the recommendations from the lawyer, and as folks will recall, this doesn't 100% for those boundaries protect, right, against liability. So it remains a concern, just full disclosure, right, as per the information shared in the letter. So, again, on a case by case basis, that is what's going to have to be established, which is why this is left open, because in this case, it is a staff member's a pet. If it's a household pet that goes through this, then right. So it's intentionally left open to allow for the case that was brought forward in the case of a staff animal being the staff dog being the support animal. And it provides the opportunity for a family to bring a household pet in. And again, I'm giving that to the board's information. I ask the board to consider what they would like. It's again, if they can live with the amended policy and
I'll just say one more thing, Rebecca, and then I'll be quiet. I think that the problem solving that you're trying to do, the foundation of it is inclusive education. And I just wanted to say thank you for trying to find a solution that supports children having access to an education.
you took me closing right from right from. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I have Melissa, April, then Cynthia. Melissa?
Sorry, thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button. I wanted to say thank you for continuing to work on this policy. As I do have a kid who benefits from having dogs in the classroom, this is really something that's important that we continue to look for solutions. So thank you. This one is just a bit of a statement, not so much a question, but in 5.2 where it says we must accommodate, I know we've already spoken about this, but if we must accommodate these who have fears, I'm not crediting their fears, but I am saying maybe it should be removed because we also should be accommodating the children who have extreme anxiety about being there without a dog. I had questions about disability, the word
I'm
disability.
going to interject and just respond to 5.2 one at a time. I believe that we already have a
Mhm.
change to that one already. And I'll remind folks, and it's absolutely fine to have second look, but nothing except for the emotional support animal part was changed from the previously approved motion, and so our policy. So again, open to considerations, but I'll just add that those are in addition to what we were going to be discussing today. And if it's making it cleaner and work better, I'm fine with that. But just a general reminder of that. So I want to make sure Archie's getting all those changes. Archie, are you keeping up? Okay, thank you.
I hear what you're saying, and I think we're just looking at it with different eyes.
Yeah.
Because of everything that's happened. So it is different parts of the policy that are coming up. The behavioral history 2.1.3.1.2, where does the behavioral history come from? Is it you're just hoping that somebody is being honest about the behavior of their dog, or does it need to come from a veterinarian or a trainer?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, so the board is being asked to again make a decision on their threshold for liability, because there is no certification available for what we're terming emotional support animals. What the legal advice has been is to here's a number of ways to help mitigate potential issues, and so again, you would leave that to staff to get that from whether it's the staff member who has the dog or the family, right? Can you share with us, right, any concerns in the past? Has there been incidences of, right, aggressive behavior from your dog? Did you ever get a ticket for a dog bite? Like it's just that due diligence piece. There is no other sort of guidebook to follow, because we are, again, the board is being asked to decide their threshold. And so while this will not limit any liability, it will certainly put some safeguards in place to minimize that liability for the sake of accessibility. And maybe because, and this is just me editorializing, that the legal system hasn't necessarily caught up to accommodation of students in inclusive settings in public schools. So yeah, if there's more wording or better wording, please, this is advice from the lawyer, and that's why I just put it in as is, where is, and I'm appreciating all the suggestions.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I think it comes down to understanding how much risk I'm okay with when people lie all the time about the behavior of their dog. But I understand that this is where it's at. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know of anyone that ever says, my dog's aggressive.
I did.
I can
You
concur.
took
You
up-
have shared that with me.
Everyone else, every single dog owner I know always says, oh, my dog's awesome.
Yeah, my dog never bites anybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
until they do.
so they do.
Hey, thank you. April?
Yeah, this is just a clarifying question and just like we keep saying the word animal. And I worry because first off, the dog is the only one that is covered by all of these training and the certification and all of that. No other animal is. And my only concern by leaving animal anywhere in there is would it ever be a situation, and this is just a question, would it ever be a situation? I know a lot of classroom teachers who have, pet lizards and all of these classroom pets that are either in an aquarium or, those kinds of things that I wouldn't want to see that practice disappear because our language uses the word animal instead of being specific enough with just dog.
Yeah, I will share that I agree. I think this was it should have been changed to emotional support dog because the advice was about dogs. So again, we have animals later on in terms of bunnies and other things brought in for educational purposes.
Yeah.
But I think I would suggest, yes, that the board
Keep it dogs.
keep it dogs. We have assistance dogs and emotional support dogs.
There's no
And then it's-
certification for a
then
bunny.
it's
as far as
clear.
I know.
Well, not yet. but-
And that was something that I had on my list too, if it didn't come up, because it's just the consistency piece for me.
Yep, I have no issue with that.
Okay, so Melissa, your hand's still up?
Yeah.
So we can put that down, and then I have Cynthia and then Lisa.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you everybody for your comments and thoughtfulness. I'm not sure if this is a question, but maybe just a clarifying comment. But when we think about this particular dog coming into the school, it sounds to me like this dog could either be brought in from the teacher or it could be brought in from the student. And now if it's brought in from the teacher, that's fine. We have a responsible adult who's taking care of this dog. But if the student brings in the dog and it's their family pet, we do have 3.3 that says control animal must be leashed, tethered, under the supervision of a competent adult. Do we run into any problems if we have this policy that is saying we're welcoming emotional support dogs, and then this family has a pet that's going to be that emotional support dog, but then we don't have an adult in the school who's willing to accept the responsibility? Is this a potential problem?
Yes.
Yes,
And that's
what I said.
where, sorry, I wasn't in response. That would be a factor, right? That would be the case by case basis. So that would be a conversation. And again, if with an assistance dog, as we know, they're trained to work with and only with the child, and so it's not about an adult in the building. In this case, my supposition would be that we would be asking for an adult in the building to provide that additional support, which they may or may not be able to do, in which case, again, it's a case by case basis, and it isn't a blanket. Now we're supporting emotional support dogs. It's to allow for the outlying circumstance that I think was so eloquently shared by the parent. And again, the board is being asked to consider how within policy the board can approve that animal in the classroom to support the educational access of the child.
Okay.
And I'll recall too, folks, that assistance dogs is separate. That's one. Emotional support dogs is separate. That's two. Animals in school for educational purposes is separate. That's three. So they don't overlap. They're separate sections for the reason. But your points you brought up are valid, so I was able to hopefully clarify.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. And I think if the board is willing to accept this policy and respect that things will happen on a case by case basis, that makes good sense. Then the other thing I was curious about is, say the dog is attached to the adult in the classroom, do we need to have any considerations for that student who's going to move out of that classroom at some point and loses that dog because that student's no longer in the classroom with the dog that's attached to a teacher? Or is
That's
that
right.
outside
No.
of policy and that's just circumstantial? Just a thought.
That is circumstantial. This policy is in place for support in the classroom, and that is, sure the parent won't mind me sharing that we've had that conversation. That is understood. And you know, if the staff member who has the pet is away, right, then we know and hope. I shouldn't say we hope. We know that you know, there's other accommodation strategies that are being worked on. So because we always want to move to independence and away from supports in the case of certain situations. Obviously, with a permanent a permanent issue like a vision impairment, that's not going to go away. But again, the dog travels with the individual. So yeah, it would be a whole new situation if it's another teacher's pet in a new classroom, and then we'd have to work through that and see if it was applicable or being able to be accommodated.
In these, okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fantastic. It's really quite convoluted. When I look back to our original policy from a few years ago, I think it was 3 sentences long.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Okay, so just Archie, I was about to mention that we have 8 minutes before we start the committee of the whole, and it's a public meeting. So just a reminder, and we have one more policy to address. But Lisa, your hand was up next.
I just wanted to say, why don't we move section to help April out for animals versus dogs versus whichever? Why don't we put section 3 as section 1? And then follow it up by section 5 for health and safety considerations, and then go into assistance dogs, emotional support animals, and then all the little pieces that tie in relating to dogs. Because you got dogs on school property, et cetera, et cetera. And I would also like to suggest that we revisit this policy after the in-camera board meeting.
Comment on that, Chris?
Nope.
I don't really understand what.
I'm not fussed either way in terms of the order, but I'll just state the rationale for the order was it's highlighting where there's the most responsibility around certifications to the least. But again, you're suggesting we just reverse that and go the least restrictive to most restrictive.
Yeah.
And I'm not fussed either way as long as we're.
And then it keeps it consistent with animals. And then you've got that teacher in the classroom, this could be seen, then you're harder. This is what you've got to achieve before you can get to this stage.
Yep. I will just mention under the School Act though, that again, if even an assistance dog, not that it happens, I'm sure, maybe
Trumps everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like has
Yeah, of course.
something terrible happens, obviously they can remove the animal for the safety of everyone.
Yeah.
But I think that's understood. Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I think where we're at is we have there are some changes that are going to need to be made. So I don't think we're in a position to be accepting this as at this point. And there will be some in-camera conversation as well, as Lisa mentioned. So are we good to move on at this point? Okay, thank you. That will bring us to evaluation of superintendent of schools, and Danielle.
Yep. I just made some very minor suggestions, so I'm open to listening if anybody else has any other suggestions to the policy.
You want to speak to, just for the public listening, just speak to the
The
clarity
changes?
around the timeline? That was helpful.
Yeah, so what I did change in specifically around the timeline for superintendent evaluation is originally it said that an extensive evaluation has to be completed every 5 years, but we changed it to be within 5 years of the first contract. Most superintendent contracts are 5-year contracts. And then an added, and then every 5 years thereafter, or as deemed, I mean, that the rest is or deemed necessary. So this is what we do for the rest of our exempt contracts. They get reviewed every 5 years after their first 2-year term.
It's good.
Okay, Celeste?
Yeah, my question was, and you would know better than I would probably on this one, but 5 years seems like kind of a long time for the first one. So would it be better to say within like 3 or 4 years for the first one, and then every 5 years thereafter? Like, would you want to have to wait 5 years to get your first evaluation?
Personally, for me, I like that it's in the third year. So again, I chose not to engage with this because it's the board work, but yeah, I think within 5 years, what I will say is, I think that provides some flexibility. Like, you may not do this, like if we think about COVID, for example, sort of again,
Sure.
but then again, you could also make a motion that year to say we're going to defer because of COVID. But I have no problem with that in the third year.
Okay.
But that said, I'm 3 years, 5 months. So you're
You'd be rushed.
right.
You'd be
Yeah.
rushed.
Because
it's-
when I started,
It's fine. I
Right.
wasn't super strongly.
I would say that's up to the board, and the board, I would say, yes, I would encourage you to do it.
Do it earlier. Yeah. I even maybe change it to 4, because then it puts just a little bit more pressure on getting down to it.
Okay, Cynthia, we have 3 minutes, guys.
I think it might be important to leave the within 5 years, because I think that takes into account any kind of an election cycle that might happen. For example, you could have a superintendent who has only been there for a year, or has maybe been there for however much time, but there's an election and all of a sudden you have 7 new board members.
Yep.
So then that would be maybe too much pressure. So that could be a situation, or I think there's going to be a myriad of situations that could occur that having that 3-year deadline might be really difficult. So I think leaving within and having that discretion would be better.
Fair
I
enough.
just had one more comment. Oh, sorry.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, Celeste. You were going to comment first, and then April, I saw your hand go up after.
No, my only very brief comment was just around 3.1. It just stood out to me that I'm not so sure that we're following it so closely, that the board as a whole has input into the informal evaluations that are done. So just to, I know that you check in with Chris, Rebecca, but I think it would be really nice if we as a board together had a pre-meeting, and then you do the check-in, and then a post-meeting, just so we can all be involved in the process a little bit further. That's it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and my comment was much the same as Celeste's. Like it says here in 4.1.1 about an informal evaluation, but it doesn't really clarify what that is. And I've been on the board now for 3 years, and I know that we've had conversations about that. And so maybe, I don't think it needs to be changed in policy, maybe, but we need to have more clarity about what that informal process looks like and how involved the rest of the board is in that. So I don't know if Celeste thinks that needs to be changed in policy, or does it just need to be changed in practice?
Practice, 100%.
Okay, so we're either going to have to put this on hold till next meeting, or we're going to have to come back to this later in the day. Any thoughts?
I think, like, personally, from the conversation I heard, it sounds like we could maybe make a motion right now with the amended changes.
Okay, we have a meeting that's starting right now. So I think we're going to have to put this on hold, and we'll resume at later on in the day. Just for any public that's trying to log in to the committee of the whole. And then we're going to need a minute to do that. So I guess we're going to have to put it on hold, and we all need to log off and log into our next meeting.
We have public here, Rebecca, that might want to speak to the current meeting.
Oh,
How does that work?
I would be prepared to make a motion about policy 402. Is that what we would normally do, is make a motion to have it
Well, question clarification.
To accept it?
Oh, that will come after. Yeah.
So first, and just remind me what the words are. I move to have policy 402 or recommend that the Board of Education approve policy 402 as discussed without any changes. As
Okay.
presented.
Okay, thank you, Celeste. Second for that?
Sure.
Lisa, thank you. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, and that's accepted. So thank you for that. Do we have any questions of clarification from the public?
Yeah.
Is that a yes?
That's a yes.
Okay,
Good afternoon.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Dave. Good afternoon. My name is David Daniels. My son and daughter are students at Don Ross. And what I'm seeking clarification on today is the vaping rules and consequences that, from my own experience, aren't clear. And I would like to know what when someone is, the rules of the code of conduct are here, but the consequences are not clear.
okay.
And so what I'm seeking is,
Really sorry to interrupt you, but the questions of clarification from the public are as it pertains to this agenda. What I recommend is that you have a conversation perhaps with the superintendent.
okay.
I think that, yeah, so this portion of the, is about this current agenda, and that is not in.
But I'm also just following up with the previous meeting from the 15th that, I think tabled this, but it's also like I'm happy to speak with Chris about this.
Yeah, I apologize. It's just our policies and procedures for board meetings
Sure.
are around the agendas
Okay.
of that meeting.
Right.
So
Having public input is what?
you would,
Okay.
yeah, or you.
I can
put your
table it to the
name
next
in For
meeting.
delegation to come.
Sure.
at
All right.
the Next
Let's do
open
that.
board and say, I'd like clarification on,
That's fine.
but I'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And
That said, I
apologize,
appreciate you
yeah.
being here. We don't often have folks at the daytime policy meeting. Thank you.
David, thanks for taking.
Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Super happy to chat anytime.
I will, if you connect with Jen Morris, my EA, we can arrange that. And it may be that we invite you to come back to an upcoming open board meeting, and you can come as a delegation and ask your questions right in the open board meeting.
And then have time
The whole- yeah.
allocated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks
So much.
Bye, David.
Okay, we are behind schedule now, so we've completed the business of this agenda. We're now adjourned, and we need